Coming up, a muscle car special. We'll light up some of the meanest muscle that ever stalked the streets. These original machines are worth some serious coin. 24 of the best and baddest add up to $1 million muscle.
The best job. I'm sitting here riding around in a nice vet, and I pilfered Mike from Horsepower because he was bored.
Yeah, what's up with them letting us out of the shop? I think the last time we were allowed, we were at the strip with the Mustang you back half for us.
Yeah, see, they're afraid that we're gonna get too out of control. That's what it is. You know what? But this time, I'm driving. I don't care what anybody says. A Corvette is a muscle car in my book.
American, 2 doors, kick-ass V8, no doubt it's muscle. And tonight we're taking a look at the cars from the glory years, 64 to 70.
And that's why we call it $1 Million Muscle. We're gonna start with GM. We got your GTO, your 442, and your Camaro all coming up. Number 1 is the car with the most horsepower that Chevy ever admitted to putting in a vehicle, the 1970 LS6 Chevelle.
$4,500 would get you a ground-ripping 450-horse monster. It'd run low 13s at over 100 miles an hour, and with the Holley 750 4-barrel, a high-lift cam, and a 454 big block, you could forget about gas mileage.
8 miles to the gallon if you took it easy. 5 if you drove it right.
GM only made LS6s for 1 year before the insurance companies caught on and they had to back off on the horsepower. But 450 horses and 500 foot-pounds of torque mean it's still the General's strongest soldier.
Big blocks were everywhere in the 60s. In 68, you had your choice of 3 just in the Camaro. The L78 package was the strongest, 375 horse, low 13s and a quarter.
Even bigger bang for a few extra bucks, the Yanko 427. Pennsylvania dealer Don Yanko put Corvette L72s in new 69 Camaros. A great way to rack up some points on your license.
But you didn't need a big block to get Camaro performance. The first generation Z28 was a close cousin to the Trans Am race car.
It was built to handle, and the power came from a 4-barrel 327 de-stroked down to a 302. They sold about 20,000 of these in '69. with the help of some psychedelic advertising.
Meet Jean-Claude Keely.
To me, Camaro SS is a great foreign sports car.
Man, was everybody tripping on acid back then?
Man, it was bad.
Hey, before you go thinking all we got is Chevys, let me tell you, we got plenty of Fords and Mopars coming up. Not to mention a couple AMCs that were just as fast and just as bad as anything that came from GM.
And you gotta give GM credit because they were the ones who came out with the first factory muscle car, the 64 GTO.
And the GOAT was a real factory hot rod. The lightweight Tempest body with a 389 and 3 deuces.
348 tire shredding horses, dead stock. 4-speed or an automatic, drum brakes, heavy suspension, plenty hot for 64 or any other year. Now the rarest, most exclusive GTO ever made was the gold-painted and gold-plated 65 GTO Tiger. Pontiac only built one of them for an ad campaign, and the guy who owns it just turned down $750,000 for it.
But the Tiger's still doing what it was built to do back in '65.
Now we're gonna talk 3 famous numbers. 442, 4-barrel, 4-speed, and dual exhaust. The 71 W30 Performance Package was the last in a long and noble line of 442 muscle.
GM claimed that 455 big block only made 300 horsepower, but 442 drivers knew better. Man, that's definitely some heavy metal, and you'd better have a heavy checkbook. We just saw close to $1.5 million worth of muscle at today's prices.
And that's not counting his vet. And we gotta get this thing back tonight before we get in trouble. So we'll catch you guys later at the shop. We got some more classic muscle and some new stuff coming up.
Fords are next on MuscleCar. The Cobra, the Boss, a Talladega Big Block, and the King of the Road coming up.
Today we're looking back at some really hardcore American muscle, the years 1964 to 1970.
And some modern muscle from today, like this 5-liter Mustang that shares the same DNA as the original pony cars.
But nobody can run with the original small body, big engine car, the 427 Shelby Cobra. The SC looked fast, standing still. It was an all aluminum skin, 2-seat sports car all jacked up on roids. But the monster big block made this car a legend.
A good running 427 Cobra, we're talking about a car with 450 horsepower or better, in a car that weighs 2,200 or 2,300 pounds. You know, it's dangerous, but it's a hell of a lot of fun.
Fun? I'm talking 0 to 60 in a tick under 4 seconds, and 0 to 100 and back to a dead stop in 14 seconds. It's a 160-mile-an-hour race car with a license plate. Hard to believe Shelby was selling that level of performance in '65 for a skosh under $6,000.
Ford's big blocks were all over the racing world back then.
And it's still strong on the streets. Ford claimed the 428-70 Torino Talladega only had 335 horses, but the 440 pounds of torque tell the real story. That long nose was meant for NASCAR racing. And the next year, Ford tried something really weird for the same reason.
Torino from the back, kind of weird looking aerodynamic sports car from the front. That was the Torino King Cobra, a big track racer that didn't quite work out. Ford made 3 King Cobras and gave up, but if anyone has a problem with the way it looks, the 429 under the hood ought to shut them right up.
See your Ford dealer. Sit in a Mustang.
The Mustang started out pretty tame, but that changed real quick. One of the meanest ponies, the 428 Cobra Jet Shelby. They called it the GT 500 KR for King of the Road.
The Cobra emblem and the monster scoop said this was something special, and in its time it really was the king.
There's a million kinds of Mustang muscle. Big blocks, small blocks, drag race, and road race.
And the Mach 1 covered all the bases. You might find a 351, a 390, or even the big daddy of them all. The 428 Cobra Jet hunkered down behind that Eagle beak.
Not all of the Mustang's power was meant to go in a straight line. The Boss 302 was a blood relative of Ford Trans Am racers and the Z28 Camaro's mortal enemy. Low, lean, and mean. The Boss 302 was another muscle car that was built for the racetrack that found its way to the street. It started out as a Trans Am racer. Ford had to make 1,000 of them before they could go to the track. Under the hood, a 302 tunnel port small block with 351 Cleveland heads, forged aluminum pistons, just barely legal for racing. It was breathing through a Holly 4-barrel and dual exhaust. Those 290 horses up front, a top-loaded 4-speed behind it, and a 350, a 390, or a 430 traction lock in the rear end. The Boss really wasn't meant for the drag strip. It was a road racer, and it had to do more than just accelerate. Guys, we're keeping muscle alive, and it ain't just with Fords like this one.
That's right, we got $1 million worth of Mopars coming up.
You gotta start with the Hemis, but that ain't all. 6-packs and Street Warriors, next on MuscleCar.
Welcome back to more $1 Million Muscle. Back in the day when this thing was originally roaming the street, the minimum wage was $1.25 and gas was only 30 cents a gallon.
Now Project Overkill here isn't modern. This is future muscle, and it's gonna be hitting the streets before too much longer.
Does it have a Hemi? Of course it's got a Hemi. There's nothing like a Hemi for tearing up the streets. This is not just any old muscle car. This one is a warrior. Colin Comer's 69 Super B was a street racer from day one. A stripped-down predator with only one purpose in mind.
The guy that bought it knew, wanted to go street racing in the Bronx, and he was 21 years old, and this was his idea of the ultimate street car.
All this thing did was street fight. Today, this rare Hemi only has 4,000 miles on it, and it got most of those one light at a time. Chrysler said the whole package was meant expressly for those interested in sanctioned drag racing. Yeah, right. Running the streets was about as legal as this one ever got. Burning the tires light to light and listening to those two cars moving some air. The Hemi was all about raw power. Chrysler even designed their E-body Cudas and Challengers extra wide to make room for the massive block. The Hemi Cuda was a power rush you couldn't get anywhere else. Plymouth's smallest car got its biggest engine. Under the shaker hood, the legendary big bore 426 Street Hemi. Two 650 Carter carbs, a dual plane intake, and a hydraulic cam helped make 425 horses with 490 pounds of torque. That's what the factory said. But in the real world, the Hemi made over 500 horsepower. The Hemi, a Dana 60 and a 4-speed, were good for 13th in the quarter at 107 miles an hour. And that's where the Hemi Roadrunner was happiest too. It drove like a logging truck in traffic, but it was right at home at over 100. The first year was 68 and swarms of imitations followed, all with the same basic idea, a cheap, stripped out body and all the motor it could hold.
The Hemi Roadrunner got a bad-tempered brother a few months later, the 440 six-pack.
And with the cart springs in the back, drum brakes standard all the way around, this thing rode like a truck, and it turned like one too. But who cares? The six-pack was meant for one thing, going in a straight line. You could drive one of these babies off the showroom floor, run high 12s with brand new stock tires on it. Chrysler only made about 1,400 six-pack Roadrunners before the 70 model came along.
I mean, they put these cars out there on the street. Guys were, whooping butt.
And another 440 was whipping some butt in Chicago, where Dodge dealer Mr. Norm talked Chrysler into building them 48 big block darts. And look how they had to hack out the fender wells just to get those pipes in there. But uncorking them didn't take long, and then you could really go play. The GSS was quick. It'd run 12s on the street right out of the box. Just don't try and take any sharp turns with it, and don't try and make any sudden stops.
It doesn't turn at all hardly, and then you add the fender well headers, and it gives you about a quarter of turn of steering before you hit the headers with the tire, so you really have to plan your moves.
With that much engine, just pulling onto the highway could be a high-speed adventure. Now that's what I'm talking about. One of 6 left in the world, and he's driving it like he stole it.
Yeah, man, more like beating the hell out of it. Hey, we'll be back with more $1 Million Muscle.
This ain't your granddad's Buick, and this ain't Grandma's Rambler. Some of the not-so-famous muscle is next.
We're back, and we're showing you some of the hottest muscle cars of all times. But every now and then, you need to think about driving something a little bit more responsible.
Rambler Classic Wagon, see it at your friendly Giant Killer.
Something more practical, like a Rambler. None of this burning out and hot rodding around.
Yeah, right. AMC did try to work up a little bit of a rep with cars like the 69 SC Rambler. It cost the same as a Roadrunner and ran about as fast on the strip.
With a body from the Rambler American Compact, a 390 small block out of the AMX, the SC Rambler was a tire-burning second choice if you didn't want a dart or a note. AMC only sold about 1,500 of them. At least they were trying.
And the same power package went into the AMX pony car, another one that would run with the big dogs everywhere except the showroom. Now some of the top-end AMXs would run low 14s and close to 100 miles an hour right off the dealer's lot. They just didn't sell enough of them.
Yeah, but they just couldn't shake that old people attitude.
Yeah, but look at this thing. It started out as a granny car.
Yeah, but this is gonna be a sleeper. It's a whole different ball game, kind of like those Buicks were back in the day. You got the 455 big block, twin ram air snorkels, 4-barrel, hot cams, stiff springs, high compression pistons, a 12-volt posi rear, all in a restyled Skylark body. For insurance purposes, it was advertised at 360 horse, but the actual output was well over 400. Plus it generated a record-setting 510 pounds of torque at just over 2,800 RPM. That's more torque than any muscle car, period. That and low production numbers makes the GSX very desirable to collectors. Only the 1966 427 Cobras and Corvettes couldn't beat it. Not too bad for a 2-ton, 4-passenger Buick, but a gallon of leaded gas would only take you about 10 miles. And the GSX cockpit was loaded, full instrumentation, rally wheel, black vinyl buckets, and a Hurst 4-speed shifter. They were available in only 2 colors, either Apollo white or the more popular option, Saturn yellow.
That's 24 muscle classics we had on the show today. Now back in their prime, they were worth around $84,000, and today, just over $4 million.
I don't care how many millions of dollars they're worth, I'd beat the hell out of every one of them, so we're out of here.
Later.